तो आपने देखे ही होंगे। देख के तो लगता है मानो रशिया को इस्कॉन और हरे कृष्ण से बहुत लगाव है, पर रशिया ने तो हरे कृष्णा जापने पर प्रतिबंध लगा रखा था, कृष्ण के मंदिर को तोड़ा था। और इतना ही नहीं, इस्कॉन के गुरुओं और श्रद्धालुओं को तो साइबेरिया के टॉर्चर कैंप्स में भयावह टॉर्चर दिए थे, जिनकी वजह से कई श्रद्धालु अंधे हो गए, कई को लंग इन्फेक्शन हो गया और कईयों की तो जान ही चली गई। पर इतने यातनाओं के बाद भी कृष्ण भक्तों ने हार नहीं मानी। इस्कॉन का रशिया में संघर्ष बहुत ही इंस्पायरिंग है, तो फुल वीडियो जरूर देखें।
Why do these Europeans look so Asian? The answer is linked to a vast ancient empire. Kalmyks form a special minority in Russia. Around 200,000 people belong to this group. They have their own republic in the Volga region, but their features differ from other Europeans. Kalmykia is unique among Russian regions. Buddhist temples can be found everywhere in this land, and their culture clearly stands out in Eastern Europe. Now their origins hold the key to this mystery. These people arrived in several migration waves, with the last one happening in the 17th century. They crossed thousands of miles to reach southern Russia. So what makes their genetic profile so special? Most of their DNA comes from ancient Mongols, and they are still very close to modern Mongolians. They have little to no European admixture, while being the most Asian ethnic group in Europe. Guru Granth hai Guru Saja, ek osni hai bandiya, vahe Guru keh, Satnam keh, bandiya, vahe Guru keh, Satnam keh, bandiya, vahe Guru keh.
திருநெல்வேலியைச் சேர்ந்த ஜீவா என்பவர் ரஷ்ய தலைநகர் மாஸ்கோவில் நறுமண பொருட்களின் விற்பனையை வெற்றிகரமாக நடத்தி வருகிறார். இந்தியாவிற்கும் ரஷ்யாவிற்கும் இடையிலான நட்பு பல நூற்றாண்டுகளாகவே வர்த்தக ரீதியில் இருந்துள்ளது. இந்தியாவிலிருந்து ரஷ்யாவிற்கு சென்று பரிணமித்தவர்கள் 1980களில் மருத்துவம், விவசாயம் போன்ற துறைகளில் உயர்கல்வி கற்க சென்ற பலரும் அங்கேயே வாழ்க்கையை மேம்பட நடத்தி வருகின்றனர். இன்றைக்கு 20,000 இந்தியர்கள் ரஷ்யாவில் சிறப்புற வாழ்கின்றனர். அவர்களில் தமிழர்களும் உண்டு. நெல்லை மாவட்டம் சிவகிரியைச் சேர்ந்தவர் ஜீவா. தனது பள்ளி படிப்பிற்கு பிறகு விவசாய உயர்கல்விக்காக ரஷ்யா சென்றவர் ஆரம்பத்தில் ஒரு நிறுவனத்தில் பணியாற்றினார். பின்னர் வியாபாரத்தில் தமது பங்களிப்பை நிலைநாட்டியவர் இந்தியன் ஸ்பைசஸ் என்ற பெயரில் ரஷ்யாவில் 6 வியாபார நிறுவனங்களை நடத்தி வருகிறார். கடுகு முதல் நல்லெண்ணெய், பச்சை மிளகாய், ஊறுகாய், பருப்பு வகைகள், அரிசி, வாசனை திரவியங்கள் உள்ளிட்ட அனைத்து பொருட்களும் இவரது கடைகளில் விற்பனையாகின்றன.
நாட்டிலிருந்து ஒரு 25 ஆண்டுகளுக்கு முன்னாடி இங்கே படிக்கிறக்காண்டி வந்தேன். நம்ம ஊரில் இருந்து நிறைய உணவுப் பொருட்களை இங்கே இம்போர்ட் பண்ணி இந்த ரஷ்யன் மக்களுக்காகவும் இங்கே வாழக்கூடிய ரஷ்யாவில் வாழக்கூடிய இந்திய மக்களுக்காகவும் அந்த பொருட்களை தெரிவித்து கொடுத்தோம். முன்னாடி இந்த கடை இல்லாதப்போ எல்லாரும் தன்னாலே தானே ஒவ்வொருத்தரும் சூட்கேஸில் கொண்டு வந்துட்டு இருந்தாங்க. இப்போ அந்த தொந்தரவு தேவையில்லை, அந்த கஷ்டம் இல்லை.
ரஷ்யாவில் கல்வி கற்றதால் ரஷ்ய மொழியை சரளமாக எழுதவும் உரையாடவும் செய்கிறார். பொங்கல், தீபாவளி என அவ்வப்போது சொந்த ஊர் திருநெல்வேலிக்கு வந்து செல்கிறார் ஜீவா. திரைக்கடல் ஓடியும் திரவியம் தேடு என்பார்கள். ரஷ்ய மக்களின் உணர்வோடும் உணவோடும் கலந்துவிட்ட ஜீவா பாராட்டுக்குரியவர்தான்.
Russia, the largest country in the world, covers a vast expanse of areas from Eastern Europe to Northern Asia, spanning an incredible 17 million square kilometers. Russia has now become a powerful political, economic, and social entity in our modern world. The history of Russia traced back to the history of the people called Slavs. In 862, the first East Slavic state, known as the Rus state, was founded and led by Viking Oleg of Novgorod, in the area between the Volga and Dnieper river basins. In 882, it captured Kiev, uniting the northern and southern lands of the Eastern Slavs under one authority. In 1998, Christianity was introduced in the Rus state from the Orthodox Christian Byzantine Empire by Prince Vladimir I. His son, Yaroslav the Wise, who ruled the state from 1019 to death, introduced the first code of law, Ruskia Pravda. Under his reign, Kiev then soon became the center of politics and culture in Eastern Europe. From Grand Duchy of Moscow to the Russian Empire, 1283 to 1917. In the 13th century, the Mongols invaded Kievan Rus and established the Golden Horde, with the Rus's principalities as their vassals. In 1480, Moscow gained its independence from Mongol rule, forming the Grand Duchy of Moscow or Muscovy. In 1547, Ivan IV, or Ivan the Terrible, became the first Tsar, Emperor of Russia, transforming the Grand Duchy of Moscow into the Tsardom of Russia, with Moscow as the predominant state. From 1551 to 1700, Russia grew by 35,000 square kilometers per year and was transformed into the Russian Empire in 1721 under the reign of Peter the Great, with St. Petersburg as the new capital. The next century witnessed the expansion of the empire, stretching over 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and North America. In 1914, Russia entered World War I on the side of the Allied powers, including Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Japan, and the United States, against the Central Powers, including German, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman, and Bulgaria. The rise and fall of the Soviet Union, 1922 to 1991. The Russian Revolution in 1917 ended the Russian imperial rule, resulting in the formation of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. The Russian Civil War broke out later that year and ended in 1923 with the establishment of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, the Soviet Union. The capital was moved from St. Petersburg to Moscow. Vladimir Lenin ruled the Soviet Union until his death in 1924, when Joseph Stalin came to power. Under the rule of Stalin, the country was transformed from a peasant society to a military and industrial power. On September 1, 1939, World War II broke out between the Allied and Axis powers. As part of a non-aggression with Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union invaded and annexed the eastern regions of Poland, followed by its annexation of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Romania. In June 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa against the Soviet Union. In response to this, the Soviets joined the Allies in the war against Germany. On May 8, 1945, after the fall of Berlin to Soviet troops and Hitler's suicide, Germany surrendered unconditionally, marking the end of the war in Europe. After Japan's surrender on September 2, 1945, World War II ended with a total victory for the Allies. Following the war, the Soviet Union formed various Soviet satellite states and emerged as a superpower and rival to the United States in the nearly half-century-long Cold War. After Stalin's death in 1953, Nikita Khrushchev, a powerful Soviet politician, came to power, embarking on a policy of de-Stalinization. Under his rule, the Soviet Union grew rapidly, with the world's first human-made satellite and the first human into space. In 1980, the Summer Olympics were held in Moscow. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became the Soviet leader and was later elected president in 1990. In the same year, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for bringing the Cold War to a peaceful end. In December 1991, following a failed Communist Party coup against Gorbachev, the Soviet Union was dissolved and Gorbachev resigned. Russian Federation, 1991 to present. Following the dissolution, all of the Soviet republics emerged as fully independent post-Soviet states. Among these, Russia, or the Russian Federation, became known as the Soviet Union's primary de facto internationally recognized successor state. Boris Yeltsin was the first elected president of Russia. In 2000, Vladimir Putin, a former KGB officer, was elected president. He was then re-elected in 2012 and served till now. In 2014, following the Ukrainian Revolution, war broke out between Russia and Ukraine. In 2018, the FIFA World Cup was hosted in Russia. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, escalating the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war. This led to international sanctions being imposed against Russia. In March, Russia was expelled from the Council of Europe and suspended from the United Nations Human Rights Council in April.
Thanks for watching. If you find this information useful, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos of history.
Killed over 1 million Muslims that you've never heard about. The Circassian genocide enacted by the Tsarist regime claimed the lives of over 1 million Muslims in the 1800s, which was a byproduct of the Russo-Circassian Wars in their attempts to take over the Caucasus region. Atrocities committed included torture, death marches, impaling, sexual violence, and deportation. The Russian general Gregory Zas described the Circassians as subhuman filth and glorified the mass murder. Those who accepted Russification were allowed to live. The British diplomat William Palgrave stated that the only crime that the Circassians committed was not being Russian. At the time, Circassian leaders sent petitions to Queen Victoria for the British Empire to send humanitarian aid. It is estimated that between 94 and 97% of the Circassian population was lost, with many settling in the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman archives show that in 1879, over 1 million migrants entered from the Caucasus region, with around half of them dying on the shores due to disease.
And today we meet the Circassians. Hello! My name is India, and today we are going to find out who exactly are the Circassians and how their community continues to thrive here in Israel. In North Israel, there is a small village called Kfar Kama.
The people here are different from the rest of the country. Their dance, their food, their clothes.
And everyone in this community has one thing in common.
We are Circassians.
But what does that mean?
Well, Circassians come from a country that was once called Circassia, located in Eastern Europe. That country no longer exists, but their people certainly do. After the nation of Circassia was destroyed by the Russian Empire over 150 years ago, the Circassian people were expelled from the region. So many of them spread around the Middle East to places like Turkey, Jordan, and Israel. There are about 4,000 Circassians in Israel, and they are one of the smallest minority groups in Israel today.
Them speak Hebrew.
Shalom lekulam, ma shlomchem, bruchim habayim.
And their own language called Adigabza. Around their village, you can even see their language on signs.
Circassians are Sunni Muslims.
So, in the center of the village, you can find a mosque.
Burned in the famous Battle of the Ice in 1242. Most troublesome to the disunited Rus lands, however, were the invading Mongols, who ultimately proved too tough an opponent. The Mongols, whom the Slavs referred to as Tatars, burned, pillaged, and slaughtered their way through the land. In this turbulent time, a small town called Moscow began to grow and increase. Enter Dmitry Donsky, Grand Prince of Moscow, who led a number of Russian principalities to victory against the Mongols in the Battle of Kulikovo in 1380, which signaled the steady decline of Mongol power. So the years passed and Moscow expanded, and Ivan III's rumbling reigns, Cossack-led conquest of Siberia concluded, subduing native Siberians to Russian rule. The colonizing efforts of Russia had even extended to North America, where Russia laid claim to Alaska. One of Europe's enlightened desperate efforts, the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991 as the various states broke away from Russia and acquired independence. Russia subsequently Putin, who presided over a time of economic improvement, victory over the Chechen insurgency, victory over Georgia, and the 2014 annexation of Crimea from Ukraine. In 2022, Putin expressed his dissatisfaction with the expansion of NATO by invading Ukraine.
France, the UK and the then Ottoman Empire and Russia to the Russo-Ukrainian conflicts of the 21st century, Crimea has long been a site of geopolitical contention. But what makes this peninsula so important? Firstly, its geographic location. Crimea commands the access routes between the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. Secondly, it is the location of the largest Russian naval base in the Black Sea, Sevastopol. As a warm water port, it allows fleet basing and power projection year-round. After the Second World War, Crimea was part of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. Transferred to the Ukrainian SFSR in 1954, it became part of an independent Ukraine upon the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991. As a result of this history, the Russians maintained a lease on the Sevastopol naval base even into 2014. Concerns over the long-term viability of this avenue of power projection, however, may have prompted the Russian military to intervene and occupy Crimea in that year. The rest